In a world inhabited by talking animals lives young Will, a goat who dreams of becoming a rollerball player, a sport similar to basketball. Thanks to his mother, Louise, they manage to get tickets to the game featuring the Thorns, the team from the town of Videras. The players begin to take the court until the team's big star, the Black Panther Jett, appears and sends the entire stadium into a frenzy. During the game, she scores several baskets in a row, and upon seeing the player up close, Will promises his mother that one day he will be as talented as Jett. 10 years pass and Will, now a teenage goat, continues to train to become a professional rollerball player. Unfortunately, Louise has passed away, and the young goat tries to make ends meet on his own, making deliveries at the diner where his mother used to work, to pay the rent. After another day of deliveries, Will heads to his favorite court, known as the cage, to practice his shots. The young man shows great talent in the sport, but on his last shot, a huge bear catches the ball in midair and throws it against the ceiling. The bear's name is Grizz, and he kicks Will off the court, saying the young goat is too small to play rollerball. The young man tries to convince him to give him a chance, but Grizz and his gang tell him to get out of the cage and give up on the sport once and for all. Things aren't easy for Will, but they've gotten even worse for Jett, who, despite her talent, is going through a rough patch in her career. The Thorns haven't won a title in years, and the fans are starting to pressure her, saying she should retire. Tired of so many losses, Jett goes to talk to Flo, a javelin thrower and owner of the Thorns team. She says she needs to play with a more talented team, because otherwise, she won't be able to win the Claw Trophy for the Rollerball Championship. Flo doesn't seem to care at all about her own team, but she promises she'll put together a new squad, searching for young talent. Back to Will, he tries to get into his tiny room when the building's owner, Frank the squirrel, demands payment for the overdue rent. Although he likes the young goat, Frank has to support dozens of young squirrels, including Theo, a big fan of Will's. The young man promises to pay the money the next day, but he won't receive it until the end of the month, so he needs to find the money some other way. His only option is to sell his pair of official Thorns sneakers, a gift from his mother. Will then goes to a shoe store with his friends, but the shopkeeper will only accept the sneakers for half the price. At first, Will refuses, but if he doesn't get the money, he'll be kicked out of the apartment. In the midst of this dilemma, Daryl shows a live stream on his phone, where Maine, a horse and professional player for the Volcanoes, is taking on a challenge in the cage. Seeing a chance to prove himself, Will accepts the payment and heads to the court with his friends. Once there, he sees Maine challenging the amateurs to best-of-3 matches, but everyone who tries their luck, including Grizz, is defeated by the player. The guy starts bragging and even mocks the town of Vineland, saying it has nothing to offer when it comes to rollerball. Will doesn't like this at all and accepts to be the next challenger, but Maine mocks the young goat and tells him to go away, since he's too small to play. However, Will isn't intimidated and even bets his rent money to prove he's a real player. Everyone around is surprised by his attitude, and Maine accepts the challenge, with the winner being whoever scores 3 baskets first. The player is so confident that he lets the rookie go first, but unfortunately for him, Will takes a long shot and scores the first point. The crowd cheers and Maine tries to steal the ball from the young goat, but he dribbles past the madman and scores another basket in a row. With just 1 point left, Will runs toward the basket, but Maine loses his patience and forcibly takes the ball from the young goat. He then scores 2 points with ease, and on the final shot, Maine jumps up, and Will tries to block him but fails, and the player slams the ball into the basket. Unfortunately, Maine is the winner, and Will is forced to hand over the money he earned from the sneakers. To make matters worse, when he returns to the building, he sees a new tenant inside the room, and his belongings are outside, along with a note from Frank apologizing. Shortly after, Theo appears at the window, and even though he can't help, he wishes Will good luck, saying he believes in his talent. The young man thanks him, and then he goes to spend a few days at Daryl and Hannah's house until he finds a new apartment. The next morning, Will heads to work, but everyone in town looks at him with astonishment. Not understanding what's going on, the young goat arrives at the diner, where he runs into Flo. She says she was impressed by the young goat's performance, noting that despite his height, he almost beat a professional player. Flo then shows him a contract, offering the young man the opportunity to join the Thorns as a rookie. Will can hardly believe it's true, and without a second thought, he accepts the offer. Later, Jett is at home watching the news when she discovers that Flo has signed a 5'7" young player to bolster the team. The Panther gets so furious that she drives straight to her boss's office to demand an explanation. However, Flo says she granted the player's request and now she can train the young goat to be a backup on the team. Will seizes the opportunity and tells Jett he's a big fan, but she doesn't care and walks away, promising to win the Rollerball Championship on her own. Days later, the time comes for the Thorns' first big game, where Will be introduced at the stadium. Before the game starts, he meets the other team members: Olivia the ostrich, Archie the rhinoceros, Lenny the giraffe, and Modo, the komodo dragon. With the group assembled, the teams take the court, but the Thorns fans boo Will because of his size. To avoid further controversy, Coach Dennis decides to keep the rookie on the bench for the rest of the match. Finally, the referee signals the start of the game, and even though he's not playing, Will tries to stay optimistic and cheers for the team's victory. However, despite Jett's efforts, the team fails to gel and is defeated. More games take place, and the Thorns suffer one defeat after another, while Will is forced to watch it all from the bench. The team becomes the bottom of the barrel in the league, and if they lose the next game, the Thorns can kiss the Claw Trophy goodbye. The match will be in another city, and the team travels by plane, but during the trip, Olivia says that Maine has made a new music video. This time, he humiliated the Thorns rookie, saying that Will never be a professional player. Because of this, the young goat becomes a laughingstock in the region and grows increasingly discouraged, believing he'll never have the chance to prove his talent at Roarball. Later, it's time for the Thorns to face the Shadows, and, as expected, Will remains on the bench. The game is intense, and with just a few minutes left, a player from the opposing team makes an offensive move. She tries to score by jumping toward the basket, but Jett pushes her in midair, and as soon as she gets the ball, she prepares for the counterattack. However, the referee calls a foul because of the push, and the player is forced to sit on the bench for the rest of the game. As the only player on the bench, Will is called to take her place, and everyone around him mocks the young goat because of his size. However, he can't think about that now, and as soon as the referee restarts the game, Lenny manages to get the ball and tries to make a pass. Archie and the others are being marked by the opponents, but thanks to his size, Will goes unnoticed and asks for the ball. With no other choice, the giraffe passes to Will, but the throw is so high that he can't reach it. Even so, the rookie runs across the field full of rock stalactites and catches the ball, until two opposing players run toward him. Knowing he won't be able to withstand an attack from them, Will takes a chance and attempts a three-point shot. The rival players jump to catch it in midair, but their effort is in vain, and the ball goes through the hoop, with the Thorns scoring the point. All the spectators are impressed by Will, who was the first medium-sized animal to score a point in Roarball. However, the Shadow team isn't going to let that slide, and as soon as they regain possession of the ball, they launch a new offensive play. The team's forward, a giant bull, runs across the court and reaches the basket, dunking the ball and scoring another point. With just a few seconds left in the game, Will gathers the team on the bench and sets up a play to score the winning point. With everything planned out, the team returns to the game and Will receives the ball, but is marked by a player from the rival team. Seeing that Lenny is open, Will makes a behind-the-back pass, and as soon as the giraffe catches the ball, he jumps and dunks it into the basket, scoring the winning point. After so many losses, the Thorns finally win the game, and everyone cheers for the team, especially Will, who is seen as the hero of the match. Despite this, Jett is upset that she didn't play until the end and prefers to be alone. Shortly after, the team heads back to Vineland, with Lenny and the others inviting Will to play cards. The young goat accepts and asks where Jett is, but Archie says it's best to leave her alone. The truth is that the team doesn't get along very well with her, since the player prefers to be alone and takes all the credit when the team wins a match. The card game continues until Flo contacts them via video call, congratulating everyone on the victory. Thanks to this, the Thorns have become celebrities again and have even been invited to participate in a marketing campaign. The players are excited about the idea, and the next day, they head to the studio to film a sneakers commercial. The rehearsals are going well, but when it's Jett's turn, the commercial script says she must pass the torch from the team to the new player. Upon hearing this, the Panther refuses to do so, as she is still the best player on the team and won't be replaced by a talentless rookie. Will is offended by this and responds to the provocation, saying that the team only managed to win because Jett wasn't in the game. These words make the Panther angry, and she leaves the studio, with Will following her to apologize. Jett says she's tired of hearing people say she can't play anymore because of her age. The two continue talking as they walk through the streets, but the team's fans recognize the player and start swarming her for autographs and questions. The Panther tries to escape, and Will decides to help her, showing her a way they can slip out unnoticed. The pair then flees through the city, crossing the street and nearly causing a car accident, which draws the police's attention. Will then takes Jett to the subway, and before they're caught by the police, fans, and paparazzi, they board the train and manage to escape. For the first time in a long time, Jett managed to have fun and admits that she feels pressured every day because she hasn't been able to lead the team to victory. Her biggest dream is to bring the Claw Trophy to the team. But she hasn't been able to do so and feels that the fans no longer believe in her potential. However, Will decides to prove her wrong and takes her to Vineland's diner, where Jett is greeted with applause. Furthermore, the entire place is decorated with memorabilia and photos of the player, showcasing her best moments on the Thorns team. Seeing that her efforts were not in vain, Jett thanks Will and asks how he became a rollerball player. The young goat then shows her a photo with his mother, who supported him from the start and even bought Jett's official sneakers, writing the phrase "Dream Big" on them. Unfortunately, she became very ill, and Will was taken in by the residents of Vineland, who believed in his potential. He even had to sell the sneakers his mother had given him, but he intends to keep his promise to become a professional player for the Thorns. Jett is moved by these words, but soon a team car arrives to take the player back home. At dusk, Jett is alone in her room when she discovers that Maine is doing another live stream to humiliate the Thorns team. Tired of this, she decides to join the stream and tells Maine to stop bothering her team, because soon they will win the Claw Trophy. Thanks to Will, Jett finally recognizes her teammate's talent and promises that Maine will taste defeat very soon. In addition to humiliating her rival on the live broadcast, Jett's words give the whole team a new boost of energy, especially Will. The next day, she goes to the locker room, where she finds all the players, surprised by her attitude the night before. Jett then apologizes to everyone for not valuing the team and asks for their help, because only together will they win the Rollerball Championship. Everyone agrees to do so, including Coach Dennis, who is willing to train them more rigorously. This time, the coach wants each player to leverage their strengths, starting with Archie, who should use his strength to bolster the defense. Next is Lenny, who has always been underestimated by other teams because of his clumsy manner. However, the coach says he has reach thanks to his long neck and should use it to dunk the ball from long distances. After Lenny, it's Olivia's turn, who has always been insecure about her talent and is often affected by mean comments online. Because of this, Dennis forbids the player from using her phone and tells her to use her speed on offensive plays. As for Modo, Lenny fixes the Komodo dragon with a focused gaze, and he gets the message, promising to always stay focused on the game. After that, it's time to train Jett, who has always been a lone wolf on the court, but now needs to learn to work as a team and make passes. Finally, Will may not have the height or strength to overpower opponents, but he has the talent of a sharpshooter, able to sink shots from anywhere on the court. The training sessions are grueling, but over time, the players learn to work together, and this translates into victories in the championship. The Thorns reach the semifinals and are about to celebrate together at a party when Jett is called aside by Flo for a private conversation. The team manager then reveals that she has sold the Thorns to the submerged city team. She didn't expect the players to advance in the championship, so she thought it best to sell the team and keep all the money. However, the new owners want to completely overhaul the team and don't intend to sign the former players, including Jett. The player is shocked to discover this, and without her realizing it, Will overhears everything and says they need to tell the team. However, Jett forbids him, saying that if they find out, they might lose focus and lose the semifinal. Days later, it's time to play against the Shivers. And while Archie and the others are excited, Jett and Will are nervous about having to hide the truth. The game finally begins, and it doesn't take long for the Thorns team to realize that something is wrong. Jett can't seem to gel with the others, and the opposing team takes advantage of this, easily racking up points, which only makes the Panther even more nervous. With the game going from bad to worse, Will gathers the whole team and decides to tell the truth about the team's sale. They'll only have the last 2 games left on the team, and while the group debates what will happen, Jett reaches her limit and says she's going to win the game no matter what. As soon as the referee restarts the game, the Panther takes the ball and scores a basket, but they're still 10 points behind the Shivers. Jett then starts making individual plays, capitalizing on any bad passes and leaving the rest of the team out of the action. With just 1 point left to turn the game around, Will grabs the ball and heads toward the basket. Finding himself surrounded by the opposing team, the young man asks Archie for help, who jumps onto the ice court and causes one of the ice chunks to launch Will straight into the basket. However, just as he was about to score, Jett steps in, steals the ball from him, and scores the winning point. The Thorns have won the game and are ready for the grand final. However, Will and the others disapprove of Jett's actions and decide to leave the team. More days pass and each player goes their separate ways, with the Thorns' participation in the grand final remaining uncertain. In the meantime, Will returns to Vineland and trains at the cage, believing he'll never have another chance to play professionally. However, while he was practicing his shots, Jett shows up on the court and hands him the sneakers he had sold to pay the rent. She also apologizes for how she acted, explaining that she had become so obsessed with winning the claw trophy that she forgot to do so alongside her friends. Will accepts her apology, and the two then go to speak with the other players and gather the team one last time. Finally, the moment of the final match arrives, where the Thorns will face the Volcanoes team on a court covered in lava and flames. Still annoyed by the live broadcast, Maine is more determined than ever to defeat the Thorns and humiliate Jett and will win the game. The two teams gather on their benches, each going over their strategies, until it's time to take their positions. With the entire crowd on the edge of their seats, the referee signals the start of the game and the ball is tossed into the air. Lenny tries to catch it first, but Maine beats him to it, advances into the opponent's zone, and knees Will before scoring the game's first point. Despite this, the young man isn't intimidated, and the Thorns work as a team, with Jett passing the ball to Archie to narrow the score. The first half ends with the teams tied, which leaves Maine irritated, and he orders his team to increase the score by any means necessary. The second half continues, and as soon as Will gets the ball, he runs to score, but Maine charges toward him at full speed. To protect the young goat, Jett steps in front of him, but she is shoved by Maine and ends up breaking her leg. The game is then interrupted, and Jett is rushed to the infirmary, where the doctor says her knee is injured. If she continues playing, she could suffer permanent damage, and her entire career would be over. With their best player out, the team thinks it's the end, but Will motivates them to keep going, because as his mother taught him, they must always dream big. Jett agrees with the young goat, and even though she can't play, she decides to stay on the bench and support them throughout the entire game. Both teams return to the court, and when Jett appears, she is applauded by all the spectators, who recognize her talent and effort. With this motivation, the Thorns prepare for the game, with Modo taking Jett's place. The game continues, and with seconds left in the third quarter, Will grabs the ball, slams it against the floor, and Olivia takes the rebound and jumps. Maine tries to do the same, but Olivia uses her wings to glide through the air, catches the ball, and flies to the basket, scoring the point and kicking the lunatic in the face. Finally, the fourth and final quarter arrives, with the stadium changing shape and the rocks rising, thanks to the lava. With the ground more unstable, the game becomes more difficult for the Thorns, but they press on, and Will resumes the match with possession of the ball. Once again, Maine charges toward him, and the young goat runs as fast as he can toward the basket, but is shoved by his opponent and crashes into the rocks. Despite the aggression, the referee doesn't call a foul, which infuriates Archie, and he attacks Maine with a headbutt. A scuffle breaks out on the court, and because of the rhino's behavior, the referee sends him to the bench for the rest of the game. Down a player, the Thorns would be automatically eliminated, but Jett, despite her injury, decides to enter the game again. With no other choice, Dennis lets her play and shows a new play that could lead the team to victory. The team follows the coach's instructions and returns to the court, with the score at 114 points for the Volcanoes, against 112 for the Thorns. With 20 seconds left in the game, the referee signals play to resume, and Modo manages to get to the ball first. Even with the court elevated, he passes to Olivia, who dodges the opposing player and passes to Lenny. Using his neck, he flicks the ball upward, and Maine tries to catch it, but Will manages to knock it away with a header. Finally, Jett goes for broke and catches the ball in midair, but as she lands on the ground, she lands on her injured paw, fracturing the bones even further. The Volcanoes team stands in front of her to block her shot, but when Jett tries to make the play, she uses her tail to pass the ball to Will. The young goat catches it, and Maine moves in to attack him, but Will takes a three-point shot, sending the ball soaring to the highest point on the court. Everyone watches in anticipation, until the ball comes crashing down toward the basket and goes through the net, with the Thorns team turning the game around. The fans go wild with this dramatic victory, and after so many years, Jett and her team can take the Claw Trophy home. The Panther thanks Will for all his help, and the group decides to celebrate with the fans at the old court in the town of Vineland. Surrounded by everyone who welcomed him, Will gives a speech thanking the team, the fans, and especially his mother, for never letting him give up on his dreams. The group laments that they will no longer be part of the Thorns, but Modo has a surprise and shows the contract, revealing himself as the team's new owner. He reveals that he secured the contract thanks to a hard-fought game of Uno, and now the entire team has been re-signed. Will and his friends celebrate yet another victory, with the young goat certain that, wherever she is, his mother is very proud. So what did you think of this movie?